evolutionary biology as an unbroken material and historical continuum. Information, in a manner unspecifiable by physics or chemistry, insinuates itself into the universe without in any way violating lower-level laws of chemistry and physics. It doesn't interrupt ordinary physical routines, but instead it makes use of them in its ordering activity. Information, therefore, has the capacity to bring about hierarchical discontinuity among various levels, even though when viewed in a purely historical or atomistic way, nature does seem to be a closed and purely horizontal continuum. By so characterizing the presence of information in nature, I do not intend anything mystical or supernatural. This is on page 71. All I wish to emphasize at this point is that in its encounter with the informational component of nature, modern science has come up abruptly against something quite distinct from the mechanical or material causes with which it has been most at home. Information, in the broad sense in which I am using the notion here, quietly orders things while itself remaining irreducible to the massive and energetic constituents that preoccupy conventional science. The stamp of definitiveness put on nature's various entities is the effect of information, but information as such lies in some sense outside of time, undevoured by the historical or the horizontal scheme of physical causation. Information is sufficiently real to configure nature hierarchically, even though this structure may be invisible to science's leveling depictions. Though beyond the grasp of science, information is not identifiable with pure nothingness. It comes from what we may call simply the realm of the possible. But possibilities, as Whitehead notes, must reside somewhere. They could not arise out of sheer nothingness without violating every convention of rationality. How information works, this is on page 75. Information works, we can say at the very least, only by comprehensively integrating particulars, that is, atoms, molecules, cells, bits, and bytes, into coherent wholes. Thus, any attempt to specify the comprehensive function of information and its patterns in terms appropriate only to the comprehended particulars themselves is logically self-contradictory. Vague suggestions that the increasingly complex and comprehensive levels in evolution simply emerge or bubble up from below, this doesn't explain anything. This typical evasion, a confusion of description with explanation, is tantamount to claiming that the subordinate particulars of a phenomenon can integrate or comprehend themselves. Such bootstrapping, I would submit, is logical nonsense. By definition, a subordinate particular, or even a set of such particulars, cannot be concurrently both the integrated substituents and the integrating totality that gives the particulars their subordinate identities. We may readily assume, therefore, that the origin of information and its integrating capacity, these reside in some other logical space than that of the atomic and historical particulars that natural science appeals to in its modern ideal of explanation. To reply that information is just our own mental abstraction and that it has no real existence in nature is also refutable. Information inheres concretely in nature. It is not an abstraction that vanishes when we stop thinking about it, but is, rather, the very real, though scientifically unspecifiable, foundation of anything being actual at all. Form, or pattern, as philosophers from Aristotle to Whitehead have noted repeatedly, is a metaphysical aspect of things, one without which they would have no actuality at all. Informational patterning, in other words, is a metaphysical necessity, for in order for anything to be actual at all, it must have at least some degree of form, order, or pattern. Otherwise, a thing would be indefinite, and whatever is indefinite is no thing. To be something at all, an entity has to be informed in a definite way. This is a requirement both of things within the universe and of the universe as a whole, because beings would have no actuality without being informed, and this means limited in a certain way. If information were literally taken out of the world, then the world and its inhabitants at all levels would cease to be at all. Neither would there be atomic units, for these too must be patterned, limited, and informed to be actual themselves. Information subtly weaves the world into patterns, then gathers these into still more comprehensive wholes. The capacity to do science at all, what this requires is an assumption in advance that nature is informed intelligibly, and that the mind itself is informed in such a way so as to attune itself to at least some of the world's intelligible patterning. Finally, over to page 79. I am suggesting then that information can pattern the universe, and even endow it with hierarchically distinct features in a similarly non-invasive, utterly humble manner. And it may do all of this without interrupting in any way what from a purely scientific point of view must appear to be an unbroken continuum of atomic elements or historical becoming. This is very interesting on the power, the underlying basis of information. Now, Douglas Hofstadter, one of my very favorite authors, in The Mind's Eye, Fantasies and Reflections on Self and Soul, he co-authored this with Daniel C. Dennett. He includes an essay here by Harold J. Morowitz called Rediscovering the Mind. I want to start on page 37. This is The Mind's Eye. Very good philosophical text, actually. It's by Bantam Books. I have the Bantam edition, and it's 1982. It's been reprinted several times. Starting with the introduction of the theory of relativity by Albert Einstein in 1905, the neat picture of everything being determined and objective and not involving us was overturned. The new theory postulated that observers in different systems, moving with respect to each other, would perceive the world differently. The observer thus became involved in establishing physical reality. Reality became subjective with Einstein's theory of relativity, is what this man is saying. Very interesting. The scientist was losing the spectator's role and becoming an active participant in the system under study.